Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again. And today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So today we are talking about some news. So if you haven't already seen, they released the new developer update around the month of December season and what we can expect from it. And there's been some pretty interesting information both in the trailer as well as some follow-up questions we've gotten on the Discord. So that's what we're going to be going over today. The first bit is a possible buff to Elsa Bloodstone. So the screenshot we're seeing here is actually from the trailer released on the official Marvel Snap YouTube channel. And one thing you might notice, as is circled here, Elsa Bloodstone has 3 power. Now you might say, hey, there's a Nakia on board. Isn't Nakia just buffing up the Elsa? And we can notice that that is not the case. Elsa is not getting a buff from any external source, as if she was, she would have a green text in the number, which we see with Gladiator and Silver Surfer, as well as the other cards on the left. Those cards are all buffed by something. Elsa is not buffed by something, because cards at their default power always have the number in white. If it's reduced, it's in red. If it's increased, it's in green. What does this tell us? This tells us that Elsa might be eligible for getting a buff in the upcoming patch this Tuesday. Now, personally, this is something I wouldn't really mind to see. I liked Elsa Bloodstone a lot as a Season Pass card. There is no denying she was definitely overpowered and needed a bit of adjusting, but it's a bit sad to see how far she has fallen off in terms of play rate. Now, I think there are multiple reasons for that. It's not just Elsa. I think Elsa as a standalone card is still not too bad. However, the package that used to really support her super well in the Kitty Angela stuff with the bouncing, that took a pretty heavy hit between Elsa's nerf and the nerf to Angela, as well as the Kitty Pride nerf that happened just before Elsa released. So a lot of players have been moving away from these cards as they just feel like they haven't been making the cut in the current metagame. I do think part of that is because certain other decks are really, really powerful and pushing decks like this out of the game. But there is no denying that Elsa is a lot weaker, giving that +2 buff as opposed to the +3. And this is a thing that can be kind of tricky in Marvel Snap. We've seen it before with Silver Surfer, where Surfer was super duper overpowered when it was giving +3 stats to other 3-drops, and then when it got nerfed to give +2 stats, it kind of fell off the face of the earth for a while and really just was regarded as kind of a bad card as opposed to the meta tyrant it was before. The difference between 2 and 3 in this game is massive. So I actually like the approach here, if this is what they decided to go with, as giving Elsa a little bit more of a boost in stats makes her a better card on her own and in situations where you're not able to maximize her effect, but it still keeps her in that more reasonable territory of the +2 power with the buff, as opposed to the crazy stuff we were seeing with that +3 buff that she had before. Now, this isn't 100% confirmed, but I do think this is probably more likely than not. Of course, this was probably done on a test server. They filmed these quite a while in advance, so it's entirely possible that maybe they were testing out a Elsa at 3 power, and that's something they decided they didn't want for the live game, maybe back when they were actually deciding how they wanted to nerf Elsa from being a +3 effect. So it definitely could go either way. This isn't a 100% confirmation, but I do think there is a very reasonable chance, especially given how far her play rate has fallen, that we see this little bit of a buff to Elsa in the next patch on Tuesday. And the next section of news we have here is surrounding new emotes being added to the game. They showed off a wide variety of new emotes. Actually, I think it was even more than just in this particular picture. They have a lot of them in the tank, it seems. We knew about this back from San Diego Comic-Con when they first showed off a bunch of these images at a panel, but it seems like they are finally going to be joining the game, or at least some of them are in this upcoming patch. The initial way of obtaining some of these emotes is going to be involving a new system added to the game, which is called albums. Albums are going to be a boost to the collectible element of the game. I think we're going to get a handful of them launching on the patch, I think 3 or 4. We don't know the exact number, but basically it is going to be a new collection aspect of the game. They're going to be different albums featuring different variants, and as you collect the variants in these different albums, you get rewarded with a multitude of different things, one of which is going to be these new emotes. And we did have a question on Discord asking a little bit how this works. Previously, the devs have mentioned that they're going to be doing a Venomized Villains album, and there are essentially going to be 12 variants in that album. As you collect the variants in the album, you get various progression rewards, which we're going to see detailed here. This user had a question of how this is going to work. Are the 12 variants in that album specific variants, or are you just going to have to collect 12 of the various different Venomized variants that exist in the game? And we did get some confirmation on this from Steven. Each initial album launching in December will be 12 specific variants around a theme. There will be a reward for collecting 3, 6, 9, and 12 variants in each of these albums. The rewards will range from exclusive variants, emotes, or card backs to an amount of credits, tokens, or even a spotlight cash. So it sounds like they have quite a variety of rewards here. I'm curious how they're going to do that. Now, in another previous question and answer, it was mentioned that in the Venomized Villains album, if you collect all 12 of them, you get rewarded with a exclusive Venom emote. And I was talking about this on stream earlier in the evening, but that sounds like it can get pretty expensive pretty quickly just for getting an emote. If we do a bit of generous math here and say that these variants are costing around $15 a variant, being a rough average between the 700 and 1200 gold cost of different variants in the Venomized category, getting 12 of those variants ends up costing about $180, which that's a pretty large chunk of change, especially for something as kind of inconsequential as an emote. Now, this isn't something that really bothers me. I don't really care if people want to spend a bunch of money getting extra variants to get an emote. I think the emotes are kind of cool. I hope a good amount of them are fairly accessible, but it's not something that's going to bother me deeply if I can't get a hold of any specific one. It's just a cosmetic. Half the time end up muting people so you don't even see them. So it's not that big of a deal, though I do think they are a fun little addition that should be made more available to the player base, at least generally. Now, if they have a bunch of new ones that are more easily accessible and they have a handful that are very exclusive from getting these different album rewards, that doesn't really bother me at all. I don't really care. But the initial thing that came to my mind was, how are you going to get people to spend this money on chasing these emotes if the emote is all they get, right? I think people are going to be hard pressed to be spending that much money for getting a handful of variants that they may or may not be interested in using just purely for getting this emote. And this Discord response really answered my question in pretty much its entirety, which is they are incentivizing people with other things that players value in the game, such as exclusive variants, exclusive emotes, which we already knew about, or cards, credits, tokens, or the elusive spotlight caches, which are your key to getting new cards or fancy spotlight variants. So essentially what this is doing is adding another collection system to the game, where now by collecting certain variants in an album, you'll be rewarded with various in-game currencies or cosmetics. So if you think about it, it's really similar to kind of like bundles, just in another kind of package. I'm curious to see how this ends up working. I think it's very clear a lot of players enjoy the collectible aspect of Marvel Snap. In fact, I know a number of players who view it as more of a character collecting game than it is a card game to them. So for those types of players, I think this is probably something they're going to be very interested in. If you're purely here for the gameplay and whatnot, this is probably going to be of less interest to you. However, those additional resources, depending on how difficult it is to get to the different levels of each album, might make it worthwhile. I feel like this is also trying to solve a problem that the game has right now, in that once somebody has a variant they like for a specific card, it becomes much less likely that they're going to be investing in another variant, because variants aren't cheap. Now, you may get some randomly and whatnot, but these 700 or 1200 gold variants, they're kind of expensive. So why would you buy a variant for a card you already have one that you really like for? This feels like it's part of an attempt to try and fix that problem, where you end up getting players buying variants that maybe they're not necessarily the hugest on, but it helps them get other things they want, like that exclusive emote or some other cosmetic or thing that helps them get new cards, like avatars, tokens, spotlight key, etc. Personally, I think they could solve this problem really, really easily. All they have to do is make it so that you can favorite more than one variant and have your deck randomly choose from a selection of favorites whenever you play a game. I'm sure I'm not alone in having multiple variants I like for a card, but can't really be bothered to switch it out between games or when I decide to switch decks. I just usually go with the one I have set as a favorite and that call it a day. But if they were to allow multiple favorites that got shuffled through, a feature we've seen added in similar games like Hearthstone, just much success, I think it would be a win for both the players in getting to use more of the variants they've accumulated, and for the developers in enticing people to buy more variants for cards they may already have one they like for. So if that is the goal, the thing they're trying to solve here, I think they have a much simpler way of doing it, but nonetheless, this sounds kind of interesting. I'm not going to judge it fully until we really see it implemented, and we won't have to wait long because it sounds like the first batch of albums are going to be releasing in the patch on Tuesday, and they'll be more periodically added over time. I'm sure variant collectors will be especially happy with this, as if you've been a big fan of collecting those Venomized variants or any particular category of variants that get featured for an album, you're essentially going to just get a big bonus of extra stuff just for doing something you were already doing on your own, which is kind of nice. But I am curious to what people think about this. Are you looking forward to the emotes? What do you think about the information we have about these new album systems? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear it, but that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.